everyone. Thank you. Welcome. So we could circle back to our Key Vedanta series of concepts. And so far over the past few months, we've been exploring what are called these key Vedanta concepts. And the reason each and every word that we've really sunk into over the past few months, the reason that it's key is because these words, these concepts tell us exactly why and what is this experience that we seem to be having, where our experience are sometimes pleasurable and sometimes insufferable. But there's this constant change always. And we observe this and experience this as human beings living human lives. And so we find also there's no way to find full satisfaction and contentment and peace the harder we try out in the world. And there doesn't seem to be this clear and easy way to eject ourselves out of it. So we find, we meaning all of humanity, find ourselves in this loop. And these key concepts, what they do, they are a key to unlock an understanding of what is this that I'm finding myself in? How does it work? What are the mechanics around it? And if I have that understanding, if I have that knowledge, then this whole game starts to change. So when we now continue to encounter teachings from Advaita Vedanta, we find ourselves holding the keys, holding access to these switches of inner knowing that we can kind of toggle and start to change our experience in the world, start to change the texture and the landscape of our mind, which in turn changes our whole reality, as we've discussed in many different ways. And eventually to find not only peace and equanimity and healthy functioning and ease in our outer world, but we discover that ultimate awakening to an inner truth that had previously been covered up and hidden from us. So these concepts are giving us all of those components we need to make this new journey inside of this setup that we've just found ourselves in. So the Satsanga that we'll be hearing today, it's about 25 minutes. It talks about these 4 states of consciousness. And these have been referenced in earlier Satsangas, and you may have heard these teachings from Acharya Shunya or elsewhere. So this particularly is going to look at these 4 states of consciousness. And so she begins right in with it. So she says, let's look at each one individually. So through that, we'll explore those 4. And as we do in these sessions, we will together watch, sit, and listen to those teachings. And as we're listening, we're doing the process of shravanam, of listening, which means we just set aside all of our questioning. We set aside all of our analyzing. We set aside our desire to capture each and every gem, and we just let these teachings wash through us. And after the satsanga is complete, we'll all collectively have 5 minutes of silence together. And in those 5 minutes, we simply let what has come in through our ears with this satsanga reverberate within us. And so we will do that together. And at that time, you'll be invited, if you're in an environment that allows, to unmute yourself so that we feel that we're sitting together, but in silence. So if you're in a quiet space, you can unmute yourself, and there's something enriching about being in silence together. So with that, let us begin with our satsanga and continue with our silent meditation after, and then we'll have time to share and reflect as a group. So I invite us to begin our satsanga teaching for today.
So let's talk about each state one by one. So in the waking state, okay, we have already explored that it looks much more concrete, okay, much more stable. but there is an underlying theme of impermanence, and we should pay attention to that impermanence all the time, so that we don't lament when some specific impermanence comes our way. We should know that this is a shape-shifting landscape. It happens slowly and insidiously, but it happens across the most beautiful of the Hollywood stars. It happens through each one of us. It's happening. So to sit and bemoan our aging or our losses or our changes or the deaths, we can have some sorrow, but to bemoan it like a fool is just giving ourselves something to do, giving the actor some more acting to do. It's just like, it's not real. So as we step back and take a macroscopic picture, things become different. However, in the waking state, the self, it has different names. The true self's name is Atman, right? The self is known as Vishwa, of the world. So we say, who are you? Oh, I'm a human being. I live on earth. I am of the Milky Way. We have a very nice address actually. You know, I live in United States, in the northern side, on Earth. Oh, really? Oh, and it's in the Milky Way. In case we are talking to an alien, we have our identity very clear. We are a Vishwa of this world. Will you remember this? Can you say it? Vishwa. Vishwa means the universe. We are of this material universe. And even I teach you that in Ayurveda. You are made of the same dust that the stars are made of there. You know, your biological body too is actually literally made up of the mountains and the boulders and the rivers and all of that. So we have a pretty concrete identity of this world. Here's my address. Very nice. Vishwa. Then Vishwaji doesn't stay around for long, you know. Vishwaji, because an actor is already dreaming up and dreamed up this whole identity, right? Milky Way and all of that. But then actually, and then slipped into some astral experiences or adventures in the dreaming state. And dreamt up not one ID, but several identities throughout the night. And some conflict between the IDs also. You know, who am I? That confusion. But there is an I. There is an I and the others. Have you noticed that in your dreams? You are the hero or the heroine or whatever of that. You know, you could be mixed gender or no gender. That's not the question. But you are something. There is an I that is operating in the world. Okay? Having plus and minus strange or normal experiences. And they can be very dark, very concrete and heavy experiences. And I'll just add a little bit here. If your Annamaya Kosha, if your body consciousness is high, it will have a very body-based, thick experiences of dreams. And if your prana, vitality, mano, mind, and intellect, these three sheets are more involved, then you will have more intelligent kind of more problem-solving dreams. And if your fifth sheath of ananda or happiness is involved, then you will have wisdom dreams and you say, oh, I saw Baba. Sometimes students say, Shunyaji, you told me what to do. You said that. And I'm living my life. Okay, yes, you had an adventure, so it was the best kind. Okay, but it's still a dream within a dream. Are you with me? Okay. So then this dream self is known as Tejasa. Can you say it? It comes from Tejas. Tejas is it's mind-made. It's have you seen how shining everything is in the dream? That comes from Tejas. Have you seen it? The characters have this sparky light to them. There's something lit up in them. Even though you fall asleep, there is some light there. Things are operating. It's like a screen. It's a projector. And so the actor is known as Tejasa and the observer is simply observing. Okay. So then there is the deep sleep state. Okay. So there is the awake state known as Jagrat Avastha, the dream state known as Swapna Avastha. All these teachings I have taught you, but I'm coming to a point here around Sakshi. And then there is a deep sleep state known as Sushupti Avastha. In this, what happens is the senses are asleep, the mind is asleep, and the consciousness of that was used by mind and senses is curled back into a seed. And this is your symbolic death, because thank God your mind has died for a few minutes. It actually is, REM sleep is just for a few minutes, really. Your mind, your senses are dead to the world. They are not conjuncturing a dream within a dream. And your mind is not conjuncturing. Everything is shut down. This is Ishvara's plan to save us from our own non-stop, incessant dreaming. Because when the mind and senses are awake, we have this dream. When the mind is asleep but the senses are awake, we have the night dream. But now both are asleep. So we have a no dream, deep sleep. And so the consciousness is at its deepest place. And so we kind of are, and it says that we are kind of, at that time, the actor finds some rest in the heart. It's very interesting. It says that when we are awake, okay, our consciousness or our actor kind of is identified with the eyes. Whatever we see, I see humans, I must be a human. And then there was this child who was raised by wolves, so he thought he's a wolf. Do you remember that? So what we see, we identify with, and that's who I am. In dream, we're here. We can't, that's why we groan here. And in deep sleep, we are here. That's why we feel rested. Okay? It curls back into a seed. Everything is gone. No dreaming. 5 minutes. Take a break. 5 minutes, okay? And then dream. Dream some more. Wake up, dream, 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 dream. Then 5 minutes, sleep. And for those of you who don't make that 5 minutes, it leads to mental sickness, because there is no break from the dream. The reality gets aberrated. I've had my student Arjuna who had years of not sleeping, and if he is who he is, wise, contained and calm, this is not only thanks to Ayurveda or Shunyaji or whatever. I mean, there is an observer self in Arjuna that always plucked him out. Yes or no, Arjuna? Yeah. Because if the observer self is up, do you think even if you didn't sleep, you would have nothing? You would have everything. Are you with me? But for the actor, we need sleep. Are you with me? Okay. So that what happens is that this is the third state, and most of us revolve here. But what if you practiced being an observer in your waking dream more? What even as my student you became an observer and a student next? What if you did that? So your Sakshi was awake. You are a Sakshi. Sakshi Chaitanya. We even studied part of the text. You can go back to your notes now, they'll make more sense. We studied Drishya Viveka. All of this is a Drishyam. Your teacher too belongs to an experience right now. It's an optimum experience. It's opening the door to something, but it's an experience. You are the observer of this. And there is an actor here who will talk, walk, move, drink water, react. But what if you even saw your emotions as part of the actor's emotions? Is it possible? Then what if you meditated and made a pledge that I shall observe my dreams also? It's what I started doing. So my observer, which never falls asleep, never needs to dream, never needs to take a break, because I am divine self. I started staying awake even in my dream state. And then here is the answer. As you practice that, it's not hard because it's just expressing your true self. If I had to express something fake, it's harder. But if I have to just express what is already there, I just didn't know about it, right? So if I had a shawl and it's lying around and I was cold and I had to go search a shawl, it's a different thing. But I found my shawl, and I covered myself. Easy. So if I know that my true nature is to observe, then I can observe in the corporate meeting. I can observe the pain during dental surgery. I can observe when lovemaking is going on. I can observe when I am being attacked. What do you think Jesus was doing when people were throwing stones at him? Observing. That is why he would come up with the words that are mantra. What do you think Buddha was doing when his brother organized a coup? His brother wanted to be declared a Buddha, and half of his foolish students walked off with his cousin. They did not have Viveka between who is the true Buddha and who is the false one. This has been happening ad infinitum. Observed. So the more the observer starts taking the Sakshi Bhava, the actor tends to be less reactive because the true self we're observing. So it's not just the actor alone in the dream world, lost, trying to manipulate, fight, compete, beg, apologize, shame, blame, hate, lament, and fear its death. It's just a dream. And many times the so-called death comes in, and many times so-called births come in. More important is to wake up in the dream. And that is why this awake world is important. So what if we practice observing Sakshi Bhava, or evoking our Sakshi during awake dream, then during dream, there is a possibility that we might then evoke the Sakshi or the observer even during deep sleep. And already it's there. Because when you are deep sleep, there is no mind to report you are deep sleeping, yes or no. There is no senses to perceive that you were deep sleeping, yes or no. In deep sleep, there is nothing. And yet you wake up and say, I slept well. I loved it. I had such a good sleep. I slept well. I am who is that I reporting? That I is the observer that never dreamt, never was awake, never dreamt, and never fell asleep. The observer is simply observing. It knows. When you become aware of it, you see that deep sleep is the cave that you have to encounter. And on the deep sleep, the reason you can't cross it, because this is where the Maya is most dense. But on the other side is Ishvara, or reality, or knowledge, or God, or truth, or your true self. So there is this fine layer. But as you become more and more awakened, even now spiritual awakened, during deep sleep, all the keys of the universe start opening up to you. So what we are trying to do when we are trying to do is practice being awakened at a spiritual level, and waking up from the sleep of the soul. And we do that through understanding that the fourth state of consciousness, one is awake, physically awake. I should call it physically awake. One is physically asleep, dreaming. And one is physically deep asleep, not dreaming, right? Which is known as Sushupti. There is a fourth state known as Turiya, T-U-R-I-Y-A. Turiya means that which is transcendent. So they say, but there is a fourth state of consciousness known as Turiya or Sakshi, which goes through none of those, which is like a substratum of all of these changes. And the more you become aware of the substratum, the less you will get carried away by the external changes of consciousness. Internally, you shall be awake to your own truth while these changes are happening to the actor. So you will be able to differentiate between the actor and the true self, which is always there waiting for you. When you bring about observer and actor, when you bring about the observer consciousness more in your day-to-day reality, you will have improved relationships, less reactivity, and you will have a macro view on what's going on, and knowingness shall come to you. This is knowingness. But knowingness doesn't come when you're nose to nose yelling and grappling with another actor. Knowingness comes as you separate and evolve the observer within you. And then you alone can say, whoa, I want to be aware of the observer in my dreams. So I literally go to sleep like this, and I'm entering another adventure. I'm still in the trap. One dream after another. Okay, one dream that happens in Hayward Hills in that house is now entering other dreams, and I don't know where I'll go. But I'm aware of this. Then I go into deep sleep, and I'm aware I'm deep sleeping, yes, still here, but I am here. This is the deep sleep, this is me. Deep sleep, this is me. Dream world, this is me. Awake world, this is me. Concrete dream, in fixed time and space. Astral dream, crazy time and space. Deep sleep, no time and space, but still a dream. And then none of this, only me. And over here is also God. All power, all bliss. And the more we become aware of this, we are more powerful in a spiritual way. What if I was only an actor, fused with every actor? Fused with every actor. Applauding the good actors who are nice to me, so now I'm bondage to them because I want their approval or their love. Or stuck with the ones who kick me because now I want to point out I'm their victim. Some are my aggressor actors, some are victim actors. There's only one actor we should wait for, which is our guru. And a true guru has no agenda in you. Guru doesn't want to know, did you keep a journal? Did you drink hot water? Guru just wants to know, are you waking up? Because the guru woke up and found everybody asleep. So we only wait for one actor, but we still know. Only Advaita Vedanta will dare to call the guru an actor. All other systems will say, no, guru must be God, must be avatar. It's true, we also say in Advaita Vedanta that Ishvara took kripa on us, took pity on us. And they came in the form of guru to say, okay, I'll lead you. Come out of this quagmire. Otherwise, imagine, without this knowledge, we are fighting in our awake dream, we are fighting in our dream world, we have moments of breathing, aging is relentlessly happening, change and impermanence everywhere, and by the time we have a few laughters, a few good cookies, and a few good spice milks, we are dead. And then the dream begins again, another big dream. Macro dream begins with death, and then everybody celebrate at birth. That is why in Advaita Vedanta say, oh, one more fell asleep. Baby, so cute. Oh, fell asleep. We rejoice when that baby can be given spiritual knowledge and awakened. So I'm not anti any of you having babies and all of that, but please understand what is happening. And then society and culture and norms and rituals, they force us to be more asleep. So the only teaching, the only sadhana What is the sadhana Advaita has taught? Advaita is not saying that you have to do 1001 mantras every day. It's not saying that. If I taught you how to do mantra, it was only to focus your mind. Those are all beginning practices. The only thing we are asking you is to discriminate between what is truth and what appears like truth. That is all Viveka means at the end of the day. And you, as deeper you study with me, deeper will be its meanings in a minute-to-minute experience. And then it says Vairagyam, which means, and therefore step away from what is the dream. Now in today's context I can say, step away from the dream. So I am writing a book. Shunya wrote a book, dream book. Dream ambition, dream Acharya, dream everything. Okay? The only hairs, but Vedanta was not a nihilist school of thought, or there was an absurdist school of thought by, there was author Albert Camus, and he wrote a theater on absurdism, right? And he said life is nothing but a ping pong match, ball goes. Vedanta says no. It's the dream of the divine. You are divine. You are having adventures. So the more you realize it, the suffering will start reducing. Compassion will arise within you. Heaven will be found here in the process of waking up. God will come and wake you up through knowledge and Shastra and Guru. There'll be no fear then. No fear. And it's not something we have to learn. We just have to awaken and own. We have to take ownership of our own amazing spiritual power. And we have noticed it in bits and pieces, even when we were 2 or 5 years old, where the observer self came and we felt like we knew more. Sometimes the observer self will come in the form of, we may experience it through the experience of our teacher or guru, but it's the observer self, it's a magnification that happens for us. Are you understanding what I'm saying? So therefore, this is a very benign way of the universe. It doesn't blame anyone. And so somebody was saying to me, but so-and-so hurt me a lot. It's like in the dream, people are asleep, so you hurt them when you get a chance, and then they hurt you when they get a chance, and it all plays out over different so-called sleeps and deaths. So you're all settling credits, asleep people. It's not, don't take it so personally. Get busy in waking up. And then when you wake up, so when you woke up from your dream, no matter how good or bad it was, you woke up to another reality, physical reality. Similarly, when you do wake up, none of what this matters right now shall matter. All of this is so-called existing until you are in the dream. And that is why a true jnani or a true Advaita Vedanta sadhu will do work for dharma or social upliftment, but the biggest work we do is to try to wake up, because we can clean a dream ditch only so much. So I will also help another, but I will not start wallowing in like this is the only reality. My biggest help to another would be to wake up where the actor has decided that they have to clean the ditch, live in the ditch, eat, drink the ditch water. All dreams are happening. So as that same ditch-trapped actor awakens to their spiritual God truth, the ditch will disappear, everything will change. So poverty, destiny, even karma, all of these things happen in the dream. So here astrology plays a role. Here, power and powerlessness plays a role. But it's still a dream. And the more we waken up, the less these things influence you. So now say you've woken up to a great extent from those dream-like conditionings and patterns, then can the officers of the dream really make you continue to dreaming? No. So self-realization, this is it. You wake up from the dream, the cosmic dream, the illusory dream of believing that this is your reality and you're the body and you're the actor and you have less or more and there are planets who are affecting you, you have superiors and you have juniors and you have a destiny and you have a karma and you're this stuck package. But it's still a dream. And as you awaken through the Sakshi Bhava from that and you separate from it, what is not real, what is mithya falls away. And then you no longer become that ID for experiencing all of that. And that is what Tattva Bodh also said, that at that time you become free from all kriyaman or future karmas that were to come to you because they can't find you anymore. Because that is what, and Tattva Bodh ended with it, all negative karmas end because you are no longer willing to play the game. Every word I've spoken is from an awakened place. I know this is a transmission today, and many of you will move to tiny or large levels based on your readiness. But this is not words. This is my real life teaching to you. I'm setting you free here.
So now we've received these Satsanga teachings, this transmission from Acharya Shunya. And so now I invite you to spend these next 5 minutes in silence. And if you'd like, if it's quiet where you are, you can unmute yourself to be in silence together. And in this 5 minutes of mananam, of contemplation, allow what you have heard to be received by you. You don't have to write down. You don't have to try and wrap your intellectual mind around each and every word or concept. Just allow it to echo within. And if this is the first time you're coming to this series, this may feel like a lot of words, it may feel like a lot of concepts, but know that always with these teachings, the right insights that are meant to reach you at your moment in your journey have come. So in these 5 minutes, just look inward with openness, gentleness, and curiosity, and asking yourself, what has landed with me? What knowingness has emerged from within me from what I've just heard? First, a lot of thoughts may come. Allow them to arise and then continue to just settle down into the cave of your own heart and see what is echoing there for you. Keep calling the mind and attention back to your inner experience after receiving these wisdom teachings. Perhaps you're noticing something within you that was something you had once intellectually knew, or something you'd experienced which has been reaffirmed, or which has become like a crystal inside of knowingness. So, what inner knowing have these teachings reaffirmed for you? As our contemplation draws to a close, I invite you to put a few words in your mind, kind of gather together the key threads that you've discovered within. Become ready to come back to the room. Can deepen the breath. If you'd like, you can rub the palms together, generating warmth, and placing those warmed palms on the eyes or anywhere on the body. Bring your experience back to the physical surroundings, space. If your eyes are closed, when you're ready, you can open them. Rejoin us. Wonderful. Thank you for that, just being present with ourselves, being present with each other for these 5 minutes. The silence of contemplation is very important to give us that pause between receiving and then allowing it to settle. So we're practicing this as a group, but it can be a practice you can do when you review anything or read something, to savor it and then wait for something to emerge from within you, a knowingness. So now, in the remaining time we have together, what we do is we open the floor. And if someone wants to bring out what insight came from within them, if someone wants to highlight for us some key piece that they received from this satsanga today that deeply impacted them, or is the one that they want to carry forward and keep churning, um, or wants to share what question mark now came up. When we get new information or we're reminded of information, there sometimes becomes these very juicy questions that we want to sit with and churn and think through. So perhaps you'd like to share that. So I invite you now, if anyone would like to share, you can raise your hand. There are instructions for how to do that in the Zoom. Deborah.
Yes, thank you. This exercise reminded me of what came to me in my contemplation. I'm in physical therapy right now for some shoulder surgery. And when I'm doing, they have all these exercises and stretches. And what was really helpful for me is they had me do it on my uninjured side first, because it is the side, it is the knowing side. It already knows how to do things, and it isn't afraid of pain or of being hurt by some kind of movement, something like that. So when we were talking about this, I thought, oh, there's like two sides of me. There is this knowing side, and then there's this other side that is the side of fear, of pain, of hesitancy. But what this brought to me is that I can access that knowing. I am the knowing too. And so when you were leading us through the exercise, I was in that place of knowing, watching my actor side, who is so fearful and limited and afraid to stretch itself. And, anyways, it was just, that's what came to me, were just those two opposite sides and how they were part of me during that exercise.
Beautiful. Thank you, Deborah, for sharing this imagery of being able to witness and observe the knowing part and the struggling, restrained part. Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. Zaina.
Hello, hi. Um, I think, one of the things that was coming up for me was this phrase of like settling credits. And really like thinking about my own relationships, especially with family, like across generations, and just like watching these cycles playing out, like people taking turns, of inflicting harm or feeling like, feeling harmed, and the constant like going back and forth. And I'm, helping family now like work through some things, and can very much like feel so pulled into like what it feels like the truth of that, or what feels like the reality, and it's so gripping. And I really appreciate the invitation. Like, it doesn't mean that I abandon or I don't participate in any way. Like, I can show up for my sense of duty or service or whatever it is, but also that maybe there's a door that allows me to step out of like the cycle. And yeah, I'm holding that in mind, like as something that feels really intimate, intimate and personal invitation, in some of my closest relationships.
Beautiful. Yeah. Settling credits. And then we start to see it settling credits, and we step back and we say, wow, so much of it is it's settling credits. Yeah. And as she mentioned that the sadhana is that discernment between this settling credits process. Is it the ultimate reality? It's part of, it's real, in this world, it's real. And so I'm showing up for it, and I'm doing it, I'm behaving dharmically and with compassion. But there's this whole other component which is untouched by the settling. It's just observing this play of settling credits. So when she describes what that looks and feels like, when we can be the observer of the settling credits process, we feel so much relief. But we also become very skillful in the settling process itself. So I'm curious and interested to see how your engagement with the settling process shifts. You may find yourself engaged in different ways and still connected and still doing your duties. And but when you bring in this wholeness, this big piece of yourself, yeah, it'll change that game of settling. Beautiful. Suchira.
Thank you, Sadhvi Ishani ji. It was a powerful transmission actually for me today. There was so many gems throughout what Shunya ji spoke, but often when I consciously sit in a state of that Sakshi Bhava, and I'm confused if I'm even in the Sakshi Bhava, to be honest with you. Especially when emotions are high, when there is a lot of attachment to things that are happening around me. I think that over these years that I have heard Shunya ji, there has come a point in my life where I've been able to take a step back and be that observer to even that, the waves that are coming in. And there is a conscious effort not to engage, not to judge, not to get embroiled in it. But then there's another side of me which is observing that observer. Like it sometimes gets very multi-layered for me. And I'm like, who is the observer here then? Is it the observer who's observing the observer? And then I feel like I get caught up in that. So I think I'm posing that more as an experience to hear what your thoughts are or thoughts of others in the community, because I get a moment of peace when I am observing, but then I feel like I get caught up in that cycle again. So yeah.
Yeah. Has anyone else had that feeling when they're becoming aware of the observer, but then they feel like they're looking at, like when you hold a mirror and then you see like 50 mirrors inside yeah. So we see like infinitely, we're saying, but now I'll step back, but now I'll step back, but now I'll step back. Yeah. Um, you will emerge with your own insights from this. But I know for myself, when I found myself also in that loop, and then I'm thinking, well, this is just another loop. This is not, I'm not freed from the loop. I'm now in another loop called I'm being the observer of the observer of the observer. Um, I realize a lot of that is happening up in the head. It's happening in the level of the mind and the intellect, and and in time, side of time and space, and saying, let me physically, I am here, now let me step back to here. And the way that for myself it has been softened and relieved is bringing it from my head into the bhava. The bhava is not with the intellect and the mind, it's here in the heart. So then when I find myself in that loop, I would drop it into my heart and just say, let me just feel the presence of this observer without simultaneously analyzing, but now how should I respond? But now should I act? Should I not act? Should I go? Let me just come into my heart space. So that gives me relief, and it turns off that multiple refraction experience. And Acharya Shunya's teachings on karma yoga are going to really help us help the actor act. And then while also keeping this softened heart, Sakshi space. Yeah. Mhm. So I wonder if that helps also. Kalyani, and then we'll hear from Shweta.
Gemma, couple of the gems, as Suchita says, a great word because yes, there are so many. I found it interesting, when Shinji was talking about the state of deep sleep and how that is a resting in the heart. And I know in a prior part of the Satsanga, she had mentioned about that is when we are there's that connection to being in the Surya Loka, the dimension of the sun, which is ultimately that the manifestation of that divinity, that inner light as well, and that outer light, that oneness. But yet she's telling us here, we're being reminded that even that isn't the most that isn't waking up. That's also the dream. And that was just such a reminder to me that it's, yeah, like when it's with all of that, even if we think, okay, that deep sleep isn't an experience, right? You're saying the mind has died there, the senses, but still, that's not the waking up, because the waking up is the observing of even that. It's just that isness. And so that was quite profound for me. And I think also just contemplating upon some of those shifts. I think, I recently had an experience where I was walking with some with family in kind of a wooded area, and some relatives were kind of stressing out. Are we going to get lost? This isn't well marked out, and so on. And I, not being familiar with the location and not having the visual inputs, the fear started coming, and the sweating, and the, nervousness, and what have you. And um, after it, I think not quite in that exact moment, but soon thereafter, I was able to, I think, go into more of this witnessing of saying, okay, isn't that interesting? This fear that has arisen, and the way that the reaction is played out in my body, right? And again, to what you were just saying, right? That intellectual, but at least it was kind of a labeling, and it took me out of that emotion. And so that was a separation. And I think, I was just contemplating upon, like, okay, the next step in that would have been what you just said, to bring it to this heart-centered experience of, I'm surrendering these feelings to Ishvara, and Ishvara um, will orchestrate, which doesn't mean necessarily that, I don't do anything. I still want to get out of the situation if I can, but that there's a bit of, I imagine there would have been, a little bit more of a clarity to it, instead of just this like frenetic, like we have to leave, And so it's something that I'll keep churning, but it really just kind of made me think of that, and like, okay, maybe I took a little bit of a step toward that, and that's part of the journey, right? And so then maybe now with this awareness, the next time I'm in a similar situation, perhaps I'll be able to more fully remember it, and connect, like actually fully connect with the Sakshi from that heart-centered place. So that really helped me, what you were saying there as well, in terms of how to know whether we're connecting to Sakshi rather than just more intellect.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you, Kalyani. hmm Creating that space, creating that gap between the ego, the actor and the actor in the world fused, and then finding a little bit of that gap. And it's in that gap that the knowingness emerges. Yes, absolutely. Shweta, let us hear from you.
Jai Ma, everyone. Um, I just thought the session today was very raw, very powerful, as are most Acharya Shunyaji's sessions. It really, when she was using our hand gestures to show this is where you are in the dream state, and then this is where you are in deep sleep, and you're still you. Like you're going through all these phases, and you're still you. You're that divinity. So I intellectually understand that when we're asleep, we're in the dream state. That's not the real us. The real us is just somewhere there, conscious. When we're awake, we're in the waking dream, and that's not really us either on this transactional plane. We're still that divinity somewhere behind all that. And so she wants, her gift to us all is waking us up from the sleep, the sleeping dream, the dreams within the dreams, and the awake dream to our real self. And I think my question is, how do you know you're there? I mean, over the years, as I've started contemplating on these teachings, I find myself getting pulled into emotions, like Suchira said, and then realizing, like, okay, this is not me, or this is happening as the Leela of this moment is happening, and me, the actor, is getting pulled into it. This is not me. So I have that awareness. And there are times I get sucked in. There a lot of times now I find less and less sucked in. I just observe, but I'm still attached to the mind and the body as I'm observing. It's very similar to what Sujira said. And then I have these moments where I'm like everything on this transactional plane is a lila, not just what's happening in the moment, but just everything. If I'm walking the dogs and it's a horrible day, it's like, oh, God has painted today with rain. And tomorrow, if it's a beautiful day, God has painted today with the sun. It's all a lila. Good, bad, it's all a lila. So I have that awareness. But like, how do I let more layers fall off to really find that deeper me? And maybe this is not a simple question, but when will I know that I've stopped participating altogether and really found the deepest me there is? It just feels like there's so many more layers to go through. And so I'm just curious about that.
I hear you. Does anyone else feel like they're like digging a hole to bet their self, and yet the sand keeps falling in the edges, and then we keep digging? Yeah. But Shweta, one thing you said is that the catch is happening less and less frequently, or when you get caught up, it's pulling you maybe less deep than it once did, you know? So those are, as Acharya Shunya said, that the sadhana is the discernment. So that process you're describing of doing, of I'm walking the dog, I'm stepping back, I'm suddenly find myself in the same old emotional argument, but then I observe myself in it. You know, that process is the sadhana of coming back to the observer and the observed and creating that space. So, one, you're doing it. And two, you know you're doing it. You know that it's working, quote unquote, because it's less frequent and maybe less intense. And maybe you can pull back faster, you know, when you do get caught. It doesn't maybe take a year of falling deep into something, and maybe it takes a week, maybe it takes a day, maybe it takes a second. You know, so um that's the sadhana, and we are told that this is not a we're going along, life is normal, and then like a flash of lightning, we are awake. It's actually this beautiful awakening process. So it's what feels like a sand hole being dug and sand keep falling inside. If we change, one thing that has been very comforting and reassuring to me on my own journey is if I change my perspective on that and say, I I am digging and I'm seeing the sand falling in, and yet I'm seeing the sand coming out. Um, I'm on the journey. And so it feels very reassuring to see myself as on the journey. So that's also very helpful. And the knowingness. I think we've also heard Acharya Shunya describe these moksha moments. There are moments, you will have moments on the journey where you are in that space, where you are fully aware of your observer self. And then you'll dive right back in under the waves again. And so don't worry. Don't worry. You know, don't worry about the end point. You won't miss it. It's not like you'll be there and not know you're there also. And to keep coming back. The only scary part is to think we are there, but we're not. And because you continue to observe yourself and because you have this practice of discernment, um, you needn't worry about that either. Yeah. So I don't know if that's reassuring, but I hope it is. Yeah. James, let's have a final share today
Yeah,
from you.
yeah. Thank you. I think I probably just had a question today, and I know that in the last few sessions, there's this big emphasis on moving into the observer role. So I think for me, I was thinking that if we can if we know we're not in the observer role, we come into, I remind myself, no, I'm not observing, I'm processing, I'm, fighting or whatever. You come into that observer role, does that then take us directly into that fourth state, into that Turiya state, where it sounds like you're just observing and there's no processing, there's nothing else going on. But of course, at a deeper level, we realize that in that pure observation, there is action is actually taking place. So in a sense, for me, maybe, I don't know if this is just a wish, but maybe the evolution is that when you're in that pure observation role, you would always know what to do. There would be no choice about what was to be done. So that was one point. The other thing that I had forgotten is that this observer should also be cultivated, not just in the waking state, but it should be in the dream state and the deep state, and even in the kind of Turiya state. And I don't know if this is relevant, but anytime I go in a retreat where I'm amongst a group of people that are like-minded and are really interested in the topic, I always have the experience that I don't sleep, but I don't actually feel tired. So I wake up in the morning and I have this feeling, I haven't slept, but I'm not tired. And I don't know whether that is just a little peep into this possibility of these, or being an observer in every state. And I think my last thing, which I'm just saying this to encourage myself, is that that I think the fact that we're here and we're hearing, Acharya Shunya's teaching and we understand it, I think that tells us a lot as well in terms of where we are in the journey. We're at the journey where we actually are being introduced to this, and then that comes with the responsibility. So, yeah, that was my observation today. Thank you.
Thank you, James. I think all of us can nicely receive that encouragement to you, but it's an encouragement to all of us that if these teachings are coming, that means we're being awakened. That means that we're in a dream that is waking us up. And wow. Yeah, thank you also. We'll just take 5 more minutes here. Thank you also for bringing us back to that sequential teaching she gave on the Sakshi in the waking world, the Sakshi in the dream, the Sakshi in the deep sleep, and then coming to that Turiya state, that transcendent state. And that is very interesting, your share about feeling like you had been awake and yet are deeply rejuvenated. It very well could be touching that observer of the deep sleep that is rejuvenating you, but yet feeling awake at the same time. So that's beautiful. And one thing I was hoping we could just highlight from this session was this other kind of practical guidance that she gave us, which was to experiment with being the Sakshi in the waking world. So we keep stepping back from our entanglements, we keep stepping back and coming back into the observer of what's happening in the waking world. And then even bringing that potential into our sleep, into our dreaming world. And there were some discussions on the community forum a few weeks ago about this idea of lucid dreaming and things like that. So I want to mention to that person, I'll go back and find out who it was. And one comment on that is we try to come back into our Sakshi witnessing space inside of our dreaming, which opens then the possibility for us to, even in that deep sleep, dreamless sleep, to be aware of the observer. And then allows us to come right up to that Turiya avastha, that state that is just pressed up against that final layer of Maya between our individuated concept of who we are and that ultimate divinity. The practical piece that she offered us was an invitation to experiment with being the observer in all these states of consciousness. And the effect that that would have is that the actor becomes aware of its own existence as an actor and the observer. But what is interesting here is it both gives us insights into being the observer in the waking world as well. So when we try to, for example, when I wake up in that in between space and I wake up and I realize I've been dreaming, the thought comes which says, okay, in this, you know, point between these two states of consciousness, I'm moving from dreaming state to waking state. In this moment, what is the part of me that was constant? What is the presence within me that was there in my dream and that is now about to be there in this waking world? So let me, and it feels like there's this very subtle opportunity to feel in the heart space what is it about me that is still here, was there then, and will be there as I go up and brush my teeth, you know? So there's this play that can happen. I'm sharing this small example, but as that's a very rich playground for us to explore. What is this Sakshi? How can I really feel it and know what it is beyond an intellectual capacity? So this one way of inviting us to be the Sakshi in different layers of our state of consciousness. And the other piece that she said is in that practice, we of course receive all the benefits in our waking world of being the Sakshi, which we know, a reduction in our suffering, a more compassionate and wise and knowingness comes into our choices and our actions. But that also opens the doorway to us going deeper, bringing deeper awareness into these deeper states of consciousness. So when we want to dig that deep hole and come into that depth, that seemingly unknowable depth, the practice she's giving us to play with and experiment with is to bring this Sakshi presence into all the states of consciousness that we can. And that's one pathway to reach that threshold of the threshold between our conscious awareness and the Maya keeping us from fully identifying with God, with Ishvara. So it's a thing that I don't have. I invite you to re-listen to this satsanga. I don't have the perfect, beautiful words to describe what it is, but it's something there about this practice of we first step is to be aware of all these four states of consciousness. And the second piece is to now bring the Sakshi awareness, the Sakshi presence, evoke it inside of each of those states of consciousness. And we will find practical relief, but we will also find it as a pathway to depth of awareness of these states of consciousness. That is what I wanted to also highlight from today's satsanga. Yes. So there's so much here. There's so much here. I really invite you to continue to listen to this. I've heard these 30 minutes probably 5 or 6 times in the past week. Each time something lands more deeply. So even if you want to come back to these recordings and simply watch the satsanga, you're deeply, very much welcome. As we close today, I wanted to mention that our next Tuesday, the first Tuesday in June, is our last session of this series of key Vedanta topics. We've covered the satsangas we intended to cover. And so it will be a kind of summarizing, reviewing, pulling together all these threads. It'll be our moment to, as a group, pause and say, what are all the things we've explored? So I'll bring some kind of review and concluding and overviewing so that we have sort of a map of everything that we've touched on. So I invite you to perhaps do a little reflection on your own. You're welcome to bring your thoughts and reflections to our next session as well. And then from there, we begin Karma Yoga in the second week of June. So with that, I'll close for today, and with just deep reverence for this opportunity to witness each other on this journey and vulnerably share with each other our growing edges. It's illuminating, strengthening, encouraging, and very meaningful.